Hello everybody, my name is Brian Seymour. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology and the District Test Coordinator for Pickerington Local School District. I'd like to take a few minutes today and run you through the how to administer the PARCC and Ohio's AIR infrastructure test that we are going to be doing in the state of Ohio on January 29th. This will give you an idea as the test administrator, as the teacher in the room, of exactly what it is that your responsibility is and what it is that you're going to need to do on test day, or the infrastructure test day. Now, there are two different PARCC websites that you need to be familiar with. The first one you should probably already have access to. This is the Pearson Access Next. This is the legitimate live site that we will really give the real test to starting in February. The one that you have just given access to or will be getting access to is the PARCC training site. And this is where we can do some trainings with, and this is where we can do some infrastructure tests. So the infrastructure test that you have signed up for or your principal has recommended you for is going to be done in the practice test here on the training site. The way you can tell the difference between the two of them, the live site is blue and the training site is going to be brown. All right, so on test day, you have a couple of responsibilities to do. The first one is that you need to make sure that you have the devices that we're going to be using for testing. So here in Pickerington, we're going to be using all iPads. So you should have a cart of iPads that has been designated for PARCC infrastructure tests. All right, those have been locked down. You should only be able to access the Pearson Test Nav app, which I'm going to show you here in a few minutes of what exactly it is that looks like. The other piece that you should have for later on, you should have another set of iPads that is designated for the AIR tests. Those would be the science and social studies. So we are going to do both infrastructure tests at the exact same time. So it should be a half an hour on PARCC and about a half an hour or so on the science and social studies tests. Your students will actually see real test questions. They'll go through the test like it really legitimately will be done in February and so on. This will give us a very, very, very good indication of making sure everything in the district is set up properly, making sure that the iPads are configured properly, make sure our Proctor caching is configured, making sure our network can handle things. So this will give us a lot of good information, as well as you, as the teacher, will get to see a lot of information before most of the other teachers will be able to do it. So you're a lucky one getting to see this before anybody else. All right, so it's test day, or the day before testing actually is what you really need to think about. So the day before testing, I'm going to log into my Pearson Training Access Next, and in this, everything's already been built for you. We've already built fake test sessions for you. They don't have real student names in them. They're just random. It just says new student is all it says, just for the infrastructure test. So I, as the teacher, I'm going to go here to where it says testing, and I'm going to pull down to sessions. And this will now give me all of the test sessions that are built for my school. Okay. We want to make sure also up here at the top, this is a drop-down menu, we want to make sure that we're in PARCC, OP, Spring, PBA 2015. If you're not, you need to make that change. Okay. To see all of the test sessions, they're all going to be down here at the bottom of the screen. You click on this little arrow, and you click on Show All Results. Here now are all of the sessions that have been built for Pickerington Local School District. You, as the teacher in your building, will only see your kit, or only see the ones that are built for your school building. So most of you will only see one, because we're only doing one test per school building. Okay? Let's do that. All right. So I'm going to go down here. I've created one for me. So I'm going to click on my name. So click on the little box next to my name. And then I'm going to scroll back up to the top. And I'm going to click where it says Select Tasks. And I'm going to go here to where it says Show Students in Sessions and Control Sessions. So I'm going to click on that. My name is now over here to the side. Seymour Testing Group Number 2. And I click on that, and it now gives me the controls of what it is that I'm going to need to be able to do to start the test, stop the test, restart the test for kids, so on and so forth. As you scroll down, it also gives you all of your students. Now, like I said, these are fake students that we've created, so they're all just new student, last student, so on and so forth. They don't have real names. When we take the real test, these will actually be our legitimate kids with their proper usernames. The different test sessions will all be set up and so on. Okay. Now, you'll also notice if we scroll over, you'll also notice that this says ready. All right, that means that these students, their tests are all ready to go. Everything's been proctor cached. Everything's been set up, and we are now ready to begin the testing process. Before you start the testing process, there are 2 steps that I need you to do, and they are both here under where it says download resources. The first one of these, if you click on this, is a thing called seal codes. So if you click on seal codes, it's going to bring up another window, and this now is the seal code that are going to be used to unlock different sections of the test. Okay, so it's giving you 2 different seal codes. So what will happen is you as the teacher will hit the start button, and then you'll have to enter in the seal code. Now, I'm not positive that we're using this on the infrastructure test. I would like for you to print it out and have a copy of it available for you, just in case you do need it. But when we do the legitimate test, you will have about 10 seal codes, especially for ELA, and each day you'll have to enter in a different seal code. It's kind of like when you used to take the wrapper off of the test. It's kind of the same thing. We're unsealing the tests and starting those up and getting them ready to go. Okay, so if you are asked to enter in a seal code, you're just going to enter in this first number and then move forward with the test. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is you need to go down to the bottom of this where it says student testing tickets. This is going to give you the username and the password for each student. All right, so if we click on that, it's then going to give you the usernames and the passwords for each one of these. So you'll need to go to print, and as you notice, each one of these is printed on a separate piece of paper. Okay, so that'll be nice when we get to actual testing. You can just hand one of these to each one of the kids. So hit print these out. Now, we are doing testing on the iPads, and you're going to be doing your infrastructure testing on the iPads. So you can completely ignore this part here. Okay, this is set up for if we're going to do it on the computer. We're going to do it on the iPads. Okay, this is the username for the kid, and this is the password for the kid. Your passwords should pretty much all be the same. The usernames will change. Now, when we get to the real testing, this will be a little bit different, but you'll still have a username and a password that you have for each student. Okay. At the end of testing, even with the infrastructure test, I need you to recollect all of these infrastructure testing usernames and passwords, please. Okay. When you get ready to test, okay, there are a couple steps. The first step is you need to make sure that you have all the keyboards and all of the iPads set up and ready to go for the students. All right, so you should have one keyboard for each of the iPads. The iPads will be set up. The technology department will be around to set those up and make sure they're locked down properly, so you do not have to worry about that. You just need to put them out for the students to be able to access. You also need to have the seal codes and the student tickets. And for the infrastructure test, since it's not significant of who gets what, you can just hand out those tickets to basically to anyone, any student as it goes in. It doesn't have to be in any specific order because they're all just sample students anyway. When we get to the real test, they'll actually have the student name on them, and we need to make sure we match up the appropriate ticket with the appropriate kid. Okay? So now, everybody's in. Kids have got into their iPad, which I'll show you here in a second. And you are ready as the test administrator to start the test. So all you do is you come over here and to the green button, and you click on Start. And you will now notice that down here at the bottom, well, first of all, you'll notice that this is changed to Stop. And you'll also notice that down here at the bottom, all of our students that were ready, it was gray, have now changed to blue. Okay, so now the students will then log in using their iPad, so using the username and the password that you've given them, and then they'll continue to take the test. As the students take the test, this bar here will change. Okay, so in this session I have built 10 students. That's what this number 10 means. As students are active and they're actually in taking the test, you will notice that this will change to green. And it'll change to green according to how many students are actually taking the test. So I've built each one of these sessions for 30 kids, knowing that that's going to be more than what we need. So your bar may not go all the way across green. That's perfectly fine. If it's yellow, that means that they have resumed the test, or they need to be able to resume the test. Something happened. They clicked on the iPad went out of lock, or something where the student, maybe a security issue was happening. The kid maybe accessed a different access point in the building, something like that. If they're active, that means they're green. If they've exited the test, it'll be red. And if you have marked them as complete, they will turn blue. Now, how do you see what each individual kid is doing? So each individual kid, you can then click on this ready button, and from there it'll now show you exactly what each kid is doing on the infrastructure trial test, and this will be on the real test as well. So as we, here we go. So what you've got is, this would be the student's name, and obviously we can't see the kid's name because this is the practice test. This is how far they are along in the test. So this has 36 questions that they would answer. It shows you how many questions are answered, how many questions they've looked at, but there's no response required, how many questions they've looked at is visited, and how many questions they have remaining. So you as the teacher can go into each one of these individual students and see, okay, question number 1, they visited it. It'll have either a check or an X or something there, or a yes. They answered it, yes or no, and when was the last time they updated? Because maybe they went back and looked at it again. Okay. So you as the test administrator can see what's going on. And remember, you can go back and you can re-queue any of the students to task. So if you notice that, half of your class is halfway through and Billy's sitting in the back and he's only got 2 questions, then maybe Billy needs to be re-queued back to task. All right? Something needs to be said. So you can also see this bar here will also change as they go through the test. Okay? Now, let's say, for example, one of our students, something happened, okay, and they got kicked off the test, they got booted, something happened. So you as the test administrator need to go back in and resume that test. So let's say this first student here, okay, let's say instead of this saying ready, this says resumed, okay. So I would click on this little box in the front here, go up to the top where it says select tasks, and click on resume student tests. Hit start, and then whatever student, now these all say they're marked complete or they're ready, so we can't really get into there, but there would be a little box here, okay, that would then say, you would click it and you would say resume, okay, and then basically that student can re-log back into the test and they're ready to go. Okay. When you are completely done, so all of your kids are done, or all of the kids that are there that day are done, okay, you then, as the test administrator, need to go and click here in this button, and then from there, you go up to the top, and you click on Mark Students Test Complete. Click on there. Click Start, and this will say, for that day, all of my kids are done. So I can click here, and then we'll say, testing completed for January 26th, 2015. Okay? Now, once you conclude testing for the day, this cannot be reversed. So you need to make sure that either one, you're out of time, which remember we have to keep track of time for all these, and two, that everybody's done. So if everybody's done early, you need to make sure that they are really done and they're not going to go back into it. Okay? So marked as complete. Once again, that cannot be reversed for the day. You have to start a new session. All right. Now, once you have everybody marked as complete, and you'll see that everybody down here now is marked as complete, then you can hit stop. Okay. If you need to restart the session, you can then click on restart the session for anybody that you did not mark as complete. Okay. So that is basically the steps for the infrastructure test. So let's go over those real quick again for PARCC. You're going to log into the Brown site, which is the training site. You're then going to print off seal codes. You're going to print off student testing tickets. The kids will come in, the iPads and the keyboards will be set up. You will then hand out one testing ticket per kid. You will then hit the screen start button. You'll find your session. You'll click on the green start button. The students will then log in on the iPad. And then you will monitor, as the test administrator, their level of completion. So you will watch this on your computer screen. You will see what they're doing. You will have the ability to go in and check each individual student to make sure that they are on task. Okay. At the end of the test, you need to select all the students. You need to go up to mark test as complete. Click on all the students. Completed test. Then come back and hit the red button that says stop. Okay. So, all right. So now we are on part 2 of our training for the infrastructure test. This is exactly what the kids will see when they log in through the iPad. Now, unfortunately, I can't show you exactly what it's going to look like, but I'm going to get to a point and I'll show you where they can go and what they're going to need to do and all that. So I'm going to turn this camera over onto my iPad. And now you can see here are the two main apps that we're going to be using. So TestNav is for PARCC, and Air Secure Test will be what we'll talk about in part 3, which will be for the Science and Social Studies test. Okay? So for the PARCC infrastructure test, students will only have access to the Pearson TestNav app. Okay? So you should have 2 sets of iPads in your room. One of them should be labeled PARCC. One of them should be labeled as Air. So yes, you are going to have to collect the PARCC ones, hand out the Air ones. Make sure you don't get them mixed up or anything like that. Take your time doing it. But let's talk through the Pearson one. So as they go through Pearson, okay, the first piece that they're going to be asked to do is they're going to be asked to select a test. Now, this is the PARCC infrastructure test. So with the infrastructure test, we're going to do this under the training site. Okay? When we do it for real, we'll do it under Ohio. But right now, for the infrastructure test, we're going to do this under PARCC training. So we're going to go down there at the bottom, click the PARCC training, and we're going to say go to customer site. Okay? Now at this point in time, the kids are now going to log in using their user IDs and their passwords. I'm going to flip cameras here. So you should have these printed out. Okay, these are the student testing tickets. So this is for the PARCC infrastructure test. So you should have the username right here and the password for every single one of our kids. Okay. So once again, infrastructure test and for real test when we get there, make sure you have these printed out. Okay. So that's what the kids will use to log in right here at this point on our iPad. Okay. From there, they will then continue on taking the test. So they will then continue on. Once again, training, log in. So once they log in, they should be able to go ahead and start in with the test. Okay. Now, for this practice infrastructure test, there will not be any accommodations. There will not be any read-tos. There will not be any of those things. Once again, it's just completely practice. There's nothing tied to it. Nothing is recorded. No grades, no results, nothing. It is all just completely 100% practice on our part. Okay? So as the kids are going through this, remember you should be able to, and you should be monitoring which of those kids are here inside of this part of the test. Okay? So we can monitor, once again, just by going into here and looking at what those kids are doing. Okay? After the students are done, get this back over. After the students are done, there's about 30-some questions depending on which test it is that you got. Okay? So some of you have ELA and some of you have math. I just kind of did a little bit of both. That way we can see both tests and make sure that we're running through both types of tests. After you are done with the PARCC test, I would recommend do PARCC first. After you are done with PARCC, you can then collect those iPads, put them back into the cart. Then it's time to look at the AIR tests. And the AIR test is a little bit simpler. You're going to run those kids through either the science or the social studies test, whatever makes importance for your grade level. And then you're going to you look at those if we had any issues or we had any kind of problems. So we're going to come back here with part 3 of this video, and we're going to talk about the science and social studies. All right, time for part number 3, last part, talking about the AIR tests. The AIR stands for American Institute of Research, and this is the company that is creating Ohio's science and social studies test for us. Now, you should have a separate set of iPads in your classroom. These should be designated as AIR iPads. So you can't use the PARCC ones because the PARCC ones are locked down to the PARCC app, and you need these ones locked down to the Science and Social Studies app, which is the AIR Secure test. So what you'll need to do is after you finish that PARCC test, collect all of those iPads from the PARCC one, and then hand out these ones for the AIR tests. Okay? Once you've done that, you don't have to worry about logging into anything for the Science and Social Studies test. You don't have to start anything. You don't have to go in and print out test tickets or anything like that for the infrastructure test. When we get to the actual real test, you will have to, but for right now, you don't. Okay? All you'll need to do is give out the keyboards, give out the iPads, get them all connected, get everybody all set up, ready to go, and then, let me switch over here to my iPad. Then you are going to launch this app here, which is called the AIR Secure test. Now, when you and your students launch this or open up your iPad, this will be the only app that will be available. Once again, it'll be locked down for them. So as we launch this one, the first thing that's going to ask you is please select your state. On this one, we are going to choose Ohio. And the only option that you have down here for assessment program is Ohio's Science and Social Studies tests, and it automatically defaults to that one. So you can click on OK. From clicking on OK, you're then going to get this, which is the Ohio Department of Education's Science and Social Studies test. You'll notice here in the middle, this says coming soon. This is where the students will actually log in with their first name, their SSID number, and their session ID. All right. And then, so what we're going to do is we're going to go down here at the bottom where it says click here to go to practice tests. So the kids just click on the arrow, and it'll actually pull them into the practice test. Now you'll notice that this says welcome to the practice test, so on and so forth. First name, student ID, this is all grayed out. You don't have to do anything about this. Session ID, don't worry about doing anything here either. All the students will need to do is click on sign in button down here at the bottom. Okay? Click on sign in. Held it down for too long. sign in, and it'll then bring them to some options. Okay, this is where they now need to pick whatever grade level it is that they're doing. So as you can see, our grade levels are 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So if you are in 3rd grade, pick 4th grade. If you're in 7th grade, pick 8th grade, and you can do the appropriate test. Okay. Once again, just completely practice test. It doesn't count for anything. There's no scores recorded, nothing at all. It's just, did it work, did it not work, and let's gain a little bit of experience for this. All right, so let's say that I want to do I'm in 5th grade, we'll pretend. And you notice that everything else is left completely blank or says guessed. That's perfectly fine. Just make sure the grade level is selected there. Click on yes. The next page will then ask you, do you want to do the science PBA or do you want to do the science end of year? I really don't care which one you want to choose. They can do either one. Okay, so let's say we want to do the PBA. Now it gives you some options. All right, and it gives you some options here for, do you want to add in some of the technical things that students will have access to? So speech to text, all right. They can actually change this if they want. If you have a student that wants to use text-to-speech on science and social studies, make sure they have headphones connected, or it's just going to be a noisy mess with all the iPads. Print size. This will make the print bigger or smaller. Masking. Do they want masking on or off? Color choices. What do they want the background to look like? Language is set for English, is the only option here. And tracking, which is the line tracking, is set as off. I would recommend you just leave everything off unless you really know that you have a student that really needs one of these. We're going to have a conversation as well about putting these on during the actual test. So just be careful and just leave them all off, I would recommend. You hit select, and it'll then say, is this your test? Okay. Then all you're going to do is the kids will then hit start my test. Okay, it will give them an overview of the rules and what it is that they can and can't do. So it'll show them, here's where all of these navigation buttons are. Here's where the end test button is. Here's where the testing tools are at, like your notes and your line reader, zoom in, zoom out. Your menu buttons, your question drop downs, your help and volume. All right, so you've always got these global tools that'll always on there. On-screen calendar or calculator. Line reader, masking, notes, periodic table, zoom buttons, so on and so forth. So those are all there for the kids to look through if they want to before they start their test. Okay. Now, kids will then click on Begin Test Now. Now, this is giving me an error message because my iPad that I currently use every day is not secure. Yours will be secure. Okay, at this point, yours will then start, boom, in with the test. The kids can start taking the test. Okay. So I cannot show you any further on how to go forward, but you can see here on this screen, this is what it'll kind of sort of look like without any of the test questions being available. So you'll see you've got back and next, you've got pause, you've got zoom in, you've got zoom out, and then all of your questions will be here. Tools will show up here, and so on and so forth. Okay? And all you really need to do as a test proctor for this test is just make sure they can get through those steps. As long as they can get through those steps, you're fine. There's really no thing you have to watch on your computer. There's nothing that you have to hit to end. It's just practice for what it is that we can see and what it is that we can do. Okay? Now, I will be getting out to you the following. Passwords for the Brown site on PARCC. Also a step-by-step direction sheet of what it is that you need to do. After the test is done, I will also be sending out a very short little survey to get feedback from you on. Okay, I'll be sending out some of my technicians will also be out in the buildings, and they'll be in your room. I want them in there to be able to see what this looks like and to be able to expertly run through some things so that way they can see what's going on. we will also be collecting data on our end to make sure the network handles it, make sure the Proctor caches work, all those kinds of things. Okay? So please take a look at those other pieces that I'm going to be sending out here soon. If you have any questions on the infrastructure test, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to work you through some of those situations. All right. Thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate your time and your effort on hopefully making sure that this thing works for when we do it for real starting here February 18th. Thank you very much again.